Hello and welcome to the second episode of the SimNews podcast. As usual, I am joined by Adrian.
Goodbye.
Okay, he didn't get the memo. So, today we've got a bunch of news to talk about. We have got the P40DC, we've got the Airdrie extension, we've got a burial pit, so it's a really mixed bag this week.
And also, let's not forget about some of the latest but not greatest Painting World rubbish.
Well, Adrian, I'm glad you are as optimistic as ever. Anyway, I'm going to start off today. I'm going to start off today with an update on the last episode. Now, we talked about a really fun burial pit on Glasgow to Edinburgh, and Dovetail, well, they've responded. So, Mr. Protagonist, Sam, who I've talked to in real life, he's actually quite nice. He says, this is absolutely...
More fundamental interjection here. He's very nice other than the fact that he wants to burn your house to a crisp. Proceed.
Well, I'm not sure we can actually prove that, so...
I can.
Okay.
Would you like me to give it a go?
No. So he says, this has absolutely nothing to do with people being offended or not, and has everything to do with the fact that a burial pit, if that's what this is, and not an unfortunate misplacement of character models, complete with bodies, does not belong in this train simulator. It's not something we would deliberately, and I assume neither would Rivet. Then the thread was locked, and he has reported it to other staff members. I don't know who in particular, doesn't really matter. So... I think this really, it's what we expected, really. Now,
good.
Adrian, unfortunately, we will be moving on to a, unfortunately, regular segment on this show. How to sell out your fan base. And I could just imagine I'm going to have a little title card there. Maybe even a theme tune. Probably not. Anyway.
Yeah, I can indeed confection that. And you will now be hearing that now.
Well, if it's done in time, then you're hearing it right now, and it's probably amazing. Probably. Anyway, Suburban Glasgow. It was a freeware route, a really big network that was withdrawn, and it was replaced. It was converted into a full DLC for Train Simulator, which was smaller than the freeware version, and of course much more expensive because the freeware was free. And now they've released an extension to the DLC. And this adds 9 miles, yet it costs £15. Now the original route, combined with it, it's about £30-ish, which is a lot for even a short route. I mean, for roughly the same price, you can get LGV Ron Alps, which is significantly more than that when it comes to length. So,
and playability and quality.
Well, I mean, I've never played the Suburban Glasgow route, but
I have. It's a bit like driving, it's a bit like driving in Kujuland.
Well, that's not particularly a good sign. So
no, it's not a good sign.
Well, anyway, it does come with some content. It comes with a not very good Class 320, which may or may not be the Dovetail model. It comes with a Class 158, which may or may not be the Dovetail model. It comes with a Class 67, which is the Dovetail model. And it comes with a Class 66, which also is the Dovetail model. And then it comes with a very limited selection of coaches and one type of freight wagon. So really... The extra money that you need to pay to get the Class 66 and 67, I don't think it's really worth it. Because those packs, over 66, you can get one as part of Train Simulator right now. And then it comes with the rest of Train Simulator. Generally, the content in the default version of Train Simulator now is rather good, I think. So...
Compared to the original Fuji content, it's miles ahead, yeah.
Well, I mean... West Coast Mainline South, very nice route.
Slow down. It was awful when it came.
Yes, and now it is rather good.
Okay.
Tersharpy, it's still a bit broken, I think, but generally it's quite nice. And the German route, Leipzig to Riesa, or Dresden to Leipzig.
It was just, yeah, and then it got the extension.
Yes. It's also quite a nice route, although it's bugged on my computer. I can't take screenshots, but that's just a me thing, probably, hopefully. So really, should you buy the new Airdrie extension? No. Right, moving on. We've got another not very good DLC. We've got the P40DC by DTM. Not the German Touring Car Championship, I mean the Dovetail, not the Dovetail, the Train Simulator developer. So, the complaints. Incorrect model, bad texturing. I believe I've seen reports of bad sounds and also memory leaks or other glitches. I'm not too sure, but it isn't looking good. And to be honest, I wouldn't buy it. But
You wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't buy it. No one would. No one would buy it. DTM, as someone who's played some of their, DLCs before, they're some of the weirdest train simulator developers because the developer the models themselves that tend, I mean, in this case, we've already talked about it a bit. The developers themselves tend to be all right. They don't make utter rubbish in some cases. However, and they do have some interesting features, like opening doors and windows and stuff. But then they some really basic things like the sounds and stuff and textures are really default and Kuji looking, which just really takes. If you release a locomotive, like it struck me when I first played the K-Trains tracks. When K-Trains are the developers of the Vectron and the tracks that are mind-blowing for their price, as well as detail and everything. One of the curious things that struck me is that this tracks, the 383 or whatever it's called, comes with like 1,000 safety systems, all the voltages, everything in all on screens as well. It's not like let's say a script simulation where it's happening internally but you can't see it happening. No, this is all coming up on your screens and you can interact with it. So it's like really in depth. However, then you came round a bend and it was a Kuju, curve flange squeal, which just automatically bins the immersion from me, and I'm not sure if they've updated it, but it's definitely, I think, yeah, it's just.
I do know what you mean. It's inconsistency isn't very nice, but the probably the worst thing about the P40DC is nothing to do with the model or the texturing. It is, in fact, the control scheme, because since Rail Simulator first came out, A is always increase throttle and D is always decrease.
Unless you have other input mappers, but then you can correct it. So yeah, you're saying, sorry, I didn't interrupt.
But this train has gone back to Microsoft Train Simulator where D is increase the throttle. I don't know why they set it up like this, but I assume that if I ever played with it, I would immediately get very angry.
Which is what, funnily enough, happened to me the first time I played SimExpress. We've talked about SimExpress before, French developers, and as some of you might know, French keyboards, they have different layouts. It's called the Azerty layout, and funnily enough, all their trains come with that. So we're about, funnily, we on BRLS, we're about to publish a patch shortly that covers a lot of French trains with a QWERTY input mapper, which it will make playing French trains possible.
I would like to move on to the Dovetail Forums. Now, I spend a lot of time on here. Adrian doesn't.
Yeah, Adrian doesn't spend. I used to, but since I stopped playing Trains and World and looking at the mods forums, I've completely gone off. Not gone off, but I just stopped looking at them. So yeah.
So very recently, some posts came out which were admin posts basically, and they're talking about forum etiquette. And generally, it's a relatively normal description of the rules. However, there's a section in it which says, however, we will not tolerate any abusive behaviour, fair enough, hurtful messages directed at other users or individuals, fair enough, poor language, fair enough, and unconstructive negativity. And that's a bit, that's the reason why we're talking about it now, because the engine driver forums, which was what the Dovetail forums used to be, they had a reputation, let's say, of deleting posts that they didn't agree with. And so I'm worried that them putting unconstructive language in the list of things they will not tolerate is a subtle way of deleting things that they don't agree with. So I've written lots of very, very negative comments about Dovetail in the forums, but I'm worried that I won't be able to do that for much longer because they'll just delete it because it's not constructive, I say in inverted commas. So I keep an eye out for that one, see what happens. It might be bad, might be alright, I'm not sure, to be honest. Adrian, any thoughts?
Like censorship, isn't it? I mean, if you can't say what you think, then what the hell's the point of a forum? It's
Indeed.
not a train simulator or train sim world adoration feed. It's players tell you. I mean, because DTG, at least for the train sim world market, because I've never really looked at the train simulator forums because I've never ever looked at them, to be honest. But DTG always on the streams, they always market the train sim world forums as the place to go if you've got a question or a suggestion or something. However, if this means that, I mean, and it's always like meant to be the place to complain or the place to suggest, or if now you suggest, I don't know, not obviously not DTG could you all now become serial killers, something serious, like I don't know, wait seriously, DTG, could you please, I don't know, upgrade the train sim world base routes because we think they're to not a very good standard for the day and age we're in.
Yeah.
And you say no, then that means no, and then you think, right, so what the heck's the point of having a forum? So what this actually, the funny thing is, if DTG do start just deleting threads for the point of deleting them, the biggest issue is that people will migrate to other forums, that people will just create a Reddit forum or whatever, a Reddit, a thread, and they'll use different platforms. So players use the default servers because they're free and they're good. But if the actual developers start mucking around with what can be said and what can't, obviously within the limits of what's polite and nice and what's just being stupid, then you do have an issue on your hands, because it's the way of, if you want to say, if you've got two teams and no coordination whatsoever, so if you've got a developer team looking on there for, well, we're going to have a look at what things could be fixed. No, I don't know what bugs are coming out with the latest routes or whatever. Let's have a look on the forums, and then you've got a completely uncoordinated PR, PR team that check so like Sam and that lot that check the forums.
Yeah.
If that PR team is completely, as I said, it's got no coordination whatsoever with the other team, that means that they will be deleting valuable feedback.
There's a possibility, yeah.
But yeah, it is indeed worrying.
So, we're going to move on now to the very good-looking Sky and Weather Enhancement Pack, Volume 2.
From Leg Week in our house.
I've got no idea what you just said, but it's actually from Arsenal Powerhouse. It's looking very nice. You're seeing screenshots right now, unless I forget to edit them in which case you are allowed to shout at me in the comment section. But something interesting.
Yes, there is indeed something interesting. So up till now, Armstrong Powerhouse's weather enhancement pack was a literal weather enhancement pack. It added a new weather set, which improved the texture, the features with scripting and so on. But it didn't modify anything within your train simulator. It was just an add-on, a pure add-on. Because, funny enough, whilst it does say an enhancement pack, it's not really an enhancement pack, it's a pack. It doesn't require anything for it to work. But where the issue really, not an issue, but where the it will be when we get to it. But the change lies right now is that before it was, as I said, it just modified the weather blueprints. That's all. However, Armstrong Powerhouse have now included, or will be including with this Sky and Weather Enhancement Pack, a shader modification. What does this mean? So this means that, they essentially think TS looks too dark. I personally disagree, but then each to their own.
We'll see how it works out.
However, according to AP, tracing looks too dark, so they've decided that the best way forwards is to include a set shader update, and that is basically the function of Railworks Enhancer. So what it does is basically a shader is the way the lighting works in game, basically, and how things, in a very simplified way, how things work in tracing later. So up till now, most people were using RW Enhancer, which is just an app, a tool that you can use to configure those shaders using a very easy interface and make TS look however you like it best. However, now Armstrong Powerhouse are including this lighting, these shader mods, as a default with their weather pack, which is. I then read the comments because I thought, right, what happens to RW Enhancer users? Because I use the slightly modified. I use the normal TS shaders with a couple of changes to make them look, well, just slightly different, but nothing major. And if I now install this weather pack from Armstrong Powerhouse, that indeed means that my shaders will now get replaced with those that come in the pack. Now, I think it's brilliant, or it's good for them for including their own shaders modification. However, I do think that in this day and age where installers are pretty simple to make, it's not like developing a simulation game. So I mean, compared to the other work they do, it's genuinely just completely it's just really easy. I do think that they should add a tick option in the installer. Do you want to install the new the shaders, or even release it as when you buy a Train Simulator DLC and on Steam gives you two because they're like bundled together, even though it doesn't say. Like when you buy a route and it comes with a separate logo included.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say. Okay. Well, do something like that. Maybe have two DLCs, like an Armstrong Powerhouse. They used to have one called the Lighting Enhancement Pack. And perhaps have it like that. Have it work like that. And you just buy one and get both. Or even perhaps make a slight discount for those who don't want the lighting. Because a lot of people use Railworks Enhancer. And funnily enough, a lot of people use it to make Train Sim look darker, which is curious. So I'm not sure they will want to use these new shaders that make your Train Sim look brighter than it looks by default. However, obviously, because a shader is literally a file, if you install the weather, it's not a requirement. The weather doesn't require the Armstrong Powerhouse shaders. It will just look. Well, how are they publishing the screenshots? If you want the weather you have set up, the only thing you need to do is reinstall the shaders as you had them, and you've got both things at once, which is good. However, as I said, it would be nice if they provided a workaround, because one thing is enhancing weather and another thing is rebuild, because they said they rebuilt the light system, well, not the light system, but the lighting, the way shaders work from the ground up, which is quite major and not a lot. Maybe, I mean, personally, I don't know, you saw the screenshots, would you personally, now that would you replace said shaders, or would you just keep the ones you've got right now?
Well, to be honest, I don't like RW Enhancer. I think it makes the game look too dark, so there's a difference of opinion there. I'm going to see how it affects the game. In the screenshots I've provided, sometimes it looks too bright, and other times it looks just right. So I think they're probably about right when it comes to the lighting. But as I said, in some screenshots, it actually looks worse than the default. Just like how AP Weary Lines Enhancement, the second Weary Lines pack, the enhancement pack for the Weary Lines is what I like to call it. Sometimes it makes it look better, sometimes it makes it look worse. But that isn't actually the interesting thing I wanted to talk about. There's a comment on one of their Facebook posts, which is about said Enhancement Pack, the Sky and Weather Enhancement Pack Mark II. Mr. Milligan from somewhere says Train Sim 20XX suddenly topped Train Sim World in every way.
I saw that one indeed as well. Yeah, yeah.
Now this is a hot take, but Art of House they've got a reply. It says, if it wasn't already, upon installation of this pack, we firmly believe Train Simulator will be the most realistic looking sim out there. Its graphics are far more realistic in our opinion. Newer rail simulators seem to fall into the shiny / overexposed / lack of shading trap. And this is absolutely true, because Train Sim World, we've said multiple times, it's both too dark and too bright at the same time. Some routes are far too bright, some are far too dark, and it never achieves a happy medium. I think Train Sim is already there. It's already much better in this regard. It's less. It's not always as good as Train Sim World, but usually it does beat it in a different sort of way. It's not.
It's also important to correctly interpret their message. They're not saying, and I'm saying I'm not saying this for you, Bertie, but I'm saying for the audience. They're not saying the most flashy looking. So they're not saying, oh yeah, because in Train Sim World, the graphics, obviously everything's higher resolution. It looks the base look, without taking into account the lighting. If you have a rendered shot of a train in Train Sim World, it obviously looks a lot better than it does in Train Simulator. I mean, that's just how it is, because it's miles ahead tech wise. However, I do agree with AP that new graphics don't mean realistic. So what AP are trying to say here isn't that it looks flashy or new or whatever, but it's that it looks realistic. Because as Bertie was saying, in Train Sim World, the lighting's so overexposed, which I think is fun enough, curious, because this pack, to me, I was about to mention before that this new Sky and Weather Enhancement Pack does for me look very Train Sim Worldy, those shaders. However, I do agree with AP that Train Simulator looks realistic, because the cycles, if you're as someone who's been, who volunteers on real railways and stuff like that, if you're in the dark, Train Sim World either doesn't apply the lighting at all, which just makes it look weird, or they make it so dark it looks like you're inside a black hole, which is just, there's no happy mediums in Train Sim World, which is again what you said before, Bertie. And it just, Train Sim World, a lot of people fall into the trap, because I know some people that say, oh yeah, I play Train Sim World because it's got the newer graphics. Yeah, newer graphics, but then really, you take a picture of, I don't know, Dresden Station, and it doesn't look like that. Not the model's beautiful or not, or whatever you want to think, but the lighting doesn't look like that. And Train Sim World, for example, if you're inside a canopy in Train Sim World, and not in Train Simulator, I'm sorry, it looks slightly darker, but in Train Sim World, it just suddenly looks weird, and glass, and just the way. I honestly, again, going back to what we've said previously, I do think they missed an opportunity when making Train Sim World, and they just fell into what AP said in that post, which is the making everything very shiny and new trap, and then really losing the realistic look of the lighting.
Well, I think I don't think it looks Train Sim World because it's a bit too cold looking for that. But
Yeah.
Look, we're going to move on now, because one of our favourite developers, Caledonia Works, they released a new locomotive, the N15.
Can I just make a correction here? Caledonia Works are not our favourite developers by far. However, this could change. So, with this product, Caledonia Works have released their first product containing their new scripting, which includes a lot of features that were previously unique to Botman Games steam locomotives, which, if you don't know, are usually the top of the range, from textures to simulation to everything, to bits and bobs and things like that. However, Caledonia Works have now implemented things such as wobbling gauges when you're moving, or steam chest, which I haven't tried the locomotive yet, and I don't think I will, because not really into British stuff. However, it does it a steam chest is fundamental in any kind of realistic steam train simulation, because if not, it just makes it feel surreal. It's like if you it loses all the depth. And then other things like, as I said, wobbling gauges, opening windows, opening doors, things like that are nice. So on that front, they do it really well. Then they also do something really, really nicely as well, which are the texturing's gorgeous. In fact, they use the alpha maps in Train Simulator in such a way that if you look at the train on the side, Bertie will post a picture of this now. When it's dusk or like sunset, so the lighting hits the train down the side, you can actually see the paneling of the air. So, for example, the tender on this new locomotive, you can see the panels on it, which is pretty makes it look really pretty. So Caledonia Works up till now have been pretty, in fact, not pretty, gorgeous, spectacularly pretty, but then not very in depth. However, hopefully, now with this new scripting that they will be including in all their future products, unlike Trains in World again, because I never mentioned Trains in World here. Trains in World includes a lot of features on a per locomotive or unit basis and then completely dump it. So the rush hour passengers thing, something that was, they went on and on and on and on about it when they were doing it, and then it's completely forgotten now. But this is now going to be added to presumably all the well, not presumably, they confirmed they'll be adding it to all future DLC, and that is very good. However, Steam Chest, just because the Steam Chest is added, it doesn't mean it's realistic. And another issue I've always had with Caledonia Works locomotives is they do feel very arcadey, in the sense that on the Boston Games and Victory Works Steam locomotives, you feel the locomotive and mesh tools. People always forget mesh tools, but they're also very good. You feel the locomotive take its time doing things. However, on these newer developers, like, and not only Caledonia Works, but Digital Traction and some other ones, you feel that the locomotive just instantly responds, has no depth. So if you suddenly decide to put in five spadefuls of coal in the firebox, your pressure suddenly bursts and goes through the sky, and you can basically keep your regulator open on full power, regardless of what you'd have to actually really be doing in that moment at that moment in time. So hopefully we'll be able to, one of us will be able to try that, or we'll be able to listen out on social media regarding the verdict, what people think of the locomotive. But as I said, it looks very pretty, and it includes some very flashy features that, if properly implemented, would really boost the simulation.
But I think that Caledonia Works, very pretty developer. I haven't been really majorly impressed by the actual trains themselves, but I think that it's always great to see a developer moving on and advancing, and hopefully they will become one of the primary developers of steam locomotives, because imagine really good simulation on those already beautiful models. I mean, they've got they're close to being one of the better developers in Train Simulator. I think it's going to be really exciting to see how they evolve over time. So,
and just on a final note, it's also interesting that a lot of these groups that Caledonia Works collaborate with, like Digital Traction and so on, that they've always been very active with, if they will also implement these features. But carry on.
Well, I was going to say that with that over with, I think we've got through everything we've got to say today. I don't think there's anything new for us to talk about. So,
Nope.
Unless you can think of anything, Adrian, in the next 10 seconds, this is going to be the end of the show. Nothing?
There is not.
Yes, indeed. So thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon.
That will be £20 for watching.
Well,
that is difficult DTG thing. Sorry.
Well, I don't think we're going to start an OnlyFans very soon. So anyway, we're going to move on to the end of the show. So thank you very much for watching, and good night.